we're not victims, right? When we're born, we look like our parents. When we die, we look like our choices, right? Know that we have the power to create everything we ever wanted, everything we ever dreamed of in this reality, and that until you start to take ultimate accountability and ownership of your life, you will be a slave to whoever chooses to do so over yours. So if you're not taking ownership over your life, you will be a slave to whoever decides to do so. And so take back the control, take back the power, and go out there and strive for more. There's more out there. There's people out there that, have walked the journey already. And if you think that you're strapped on resources, maybe you're strapped on time, there's people who have the blueprint. You have to get yourself out there. So always remember, when you die, you look like your choices. So go out there and make the choices that'll end up leading you to a path where you'll be proud and regret free.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I have here Mr. John Mendez, who has a podcast called Walk to Wealth. And we're going to get to know him and what he does and how he helps folks. And I guess let's kick it off. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
First of all, thanks, Kyle, for the opportunity to be here, man. I'm super excited to see where this conversation is going to take us. We had a little difficulty getting on, but we're here, right? We're here, right? We pushed through, we persevered. My name is John Mendez, and I'm the host of the Walk to Wealth podcast, where I enlighten and empower young adults to build wealthy, abundant lives.
Well, exactly how do you start doing that in the first place?
Yeah, so I mean, a little bit of context, I guess, before I start giving away all the secrets, right? Money was always tight for me. I grew up in the projects. Dad was never really around growing up. My mother, she suffered from mental health issues. So as a kid, you can't, some of those complex mental health issue things, like it's really hard to grasp as a kid. It's just like, why isn't my mom the mom that I wanted her to be? And so me and her didn't really get along growing up. So my grandparents on my Dominican side of the family raised me. It was nine of us in a two-bedroom until we moved to where I'm at currently. And now it's just me, my sister, my grandparents. But yeah, growing up, money was always tight. And I got into 13 colleges, ended up going to University of Connecticut. And my first year there, I loved it, had a 3.78. School was going great. And then boom, pandemic happened. My whole college experience swept from me, right underneath me. And then it was around fall of 2020-ish, I believe. Yeah, fall of 2020-ish is when I stopped by Barnes and Noble and I picked up three books: Rich Dad Poor Dad, Index Funds for Dummies, and I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad first, and it shifted my entire paradigm and made me realize that there's another way of viewing the world out there that wasn't being taught at school, wasn't being taught at home, wasn't being taught in my environment, wasn't being taught when I spoke with friends. And I'm someone that's very curious and I love learning. And so once I finally found something that was actually going to be worthwhile in my life, because a lot of times in college, this first 2 years, just gen ed classes, you're just taking the classes to get by to get to your actual course, your actual major. And so for me, I realized that there's a whole other world out there. So that winter break between fall and spring, I just got down the rabbit hole and started looking at personal finance things, how to invest in index funds, how do I build my credit, which bank account should I use? And then that spring 2021, I came back. I mean, I was still online, so I was taking classes from my room. And I pretty much I seen the light and I couldn't unsee it anymore. So I decided to leave school, jump into entrepreneurship, and I never looked back since. So that's a little bit of the backstory of how I got to where I'm at today. And for me, I knew I wanted a medium, which is podcasting, where I could document my journey in real time, but also help with by sharing with the experiences that I've gone through and experiences of others who already walked down further on in their journey. Because for me, too many people wait until they're successful to start giving back. I want to reach out to other people my age and help them learn about money and some of the things I had to learn and teach myself. I'm very fortunate to be an autodidact, so I'm pretty good at teaching myself things. But a lot of people, they don't know even where to begin. So I was like, man, I got to find a way where I can give back and share what I'm learning in real time as I'm going on this journey.
That book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that guy, didn't he have like a
Kiyosaki.
Japanese name? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, I saw he spoke with PragerU the other day.
Yeah, he's a big time speaker. He's speaking on a lot of stages now. Uh, since his time, I think his book released in the 90s. He's done made it to every stage you could possibly speak on, if I'm not mistaken. His book has sold millions and millions of copies. It wasn't, I'll be fully transparent now. It wasn't the best book that I've ever read, but at the time, that was the first book that I picked up that really shifted my paradigm. And leading up to that point, I mean, I was reading Shakespeare and things like that for my English classes in college and high school, things I didn't really find too much value in personally. That's just my personal opinion. So as soon as I picked that Rich Dad Poor Dad, it was like reading is actually fun when you're reading about something that actually matters to you. And so I started reading these books and I was getting all this information. And I was like, I could literally just fast track my learning curve if I've learned from people who have already walked down the path instead of spending time learning about subjects that aren't really going to benefit me in the journey that I'm heading down.
Yeah. Well, I know that college is a good tool for getting into business but I've also talked to several people who didn't even go one class in college and like you kind of taught themselves along the way and are just as successful as somebody that spent, what, $600,000 to go to some, you know, prominent college or whatever. I don't know how do you actually get started once you picked up those books? I mean, you have money set aside that you're starting to put in and kind of going along the way, or how's that process start for you?
Yeah, so for me, as I said earlier, I didn't really have any role models. So it was a big learning game for me. And a
Right.
lot of the learning wasn't even just learning the material, but learning how to decipher what was good material and what wasn't. The finance niche, the entrepreneurship niche, the money niche, whatever you want to call it, it's so overly saturated with people that are giving out content. And it's very hard to distinguish between who's actually a credible source and who's not.
Right.
It's hard to distinguish who's actually selling you on one of their products and who's trying to give you genuine advice. And so for me, a lot of the times I was just spending time watching classes and I was just trying to figure out who was the guy that I should be listening to so that I
Hmm.
don't get screwed over. And not only screwed over, but screwed over and then burned because it's my money that I'm playing with
Right.
at the
Right.
line. And so for me, a lot of the first thing was really just trying to figure out, how do I even make sense of all this information? I wasn't aware of none of this stuff. I had friends that were entrepreneurs, but I wasn't your typical entrepreneur with the lemonade stand or the paper route or selling chocolate in kindergarten. I was something that I had to pick up once I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So my first step really was just trying to make sense of it all because
Right.
it was a whole bunch of new perspectives and new ideas. First of all, just around the money topic of financial literacy, just understanding how money kind of works, and then around really diving into my subconscious, really diving into my mind and figuring out why is it that I'm not successful? Why is it that my family is not successful? What limiting beliefs do I have? What identities or beliefs do I have that aren't serving me, that are keeping me trapped, that are keeping me stuck, that are keeping me from growing to what I'm meant to be? That was itself its own learning process. So it's like on the one hand, I was trying to make sense of all the new information. And then on the second hand, on the other hand, I was literally trying to figure out what within me was instilled that I'm running on subconsciously and am not aware of that is keeping me stuck and keeping me trapped. That was like the big first two things that I spent a ton of time. I'm even still trying to peel back the onion and finding new layers that I constantly got to work through. It's like the first, I don't even know if I could put my finger on it. Maybe like that whole year almost. 2021 when I decided to drop out, almost that whole year, I was just trying to figure out, what is it about personal finance and money that I was missing out that I should have been taught. Which of that information is actually good information, and then applying it to myself. That was kind of the big first two steps. It's like figuring it out, making sense of it, and then figuring out what was wrong with me and what was, I wouldn't say wrong, what was in me that wasn't serving the me that I could potentially become.
Well, are you looking for a specific business to invest in? Are you looking at stocks? What exactly are you focusing in on?
Yeah. So for me, in terms of right now, I'm really just focusing on entrepreneurship and getting growing a business. Entrepreneurship and real estate are two of the best ways to reach financial freedom. I ended up once I dropped out of college, the first thing I did was sign up for my real estate classes and I would pursue my real estate license. I wanted to get into investing, but after talking to a couple of attorneys, they gave me some bad advice. I went through this thing called wholesaling. For anyone that doesn't know what wholesaling is, essentially it's let's say Kyle, you want to sell your house for 100,000. I'll get it under contract for 100,000 and then find a end buyer and sell it to him for 110,000. I keep the $10,000 difference. You sell your house for 100,000. The buyer gets the house. Everybody wins. It makes sense for the investor because he's still within his numbers. It makes sense to you because you get rid of your property and you get the numbers you were looking for. It makes sense for me because I got a little bit of cash in the middle. So we all win, we all eat. But the only catch is you have to make sure you stay off market because it's illegal to transact in real estate on the market without an active real estate license. And so you got to make sure you're aware of what your county or state rules are. But that was just how it was in Connecticut, where I'm from. And so for me, when an attorney gave me that advice that, oh, you can't wholesale, I was like, oh, shoot, my plans kind of failed. And then I was like, all right, well, maybe this is just not it for me. And a couple months later, just around February 2021, right before I dropped out, I got on a Zoom call with this one guy. And he was like, you could probably just get your real estate license and pursue that. And you should get a mentor. So I asked him to mentor me. And then from there, I pursued my real estate license. And my goal was really to use my license to start building a career for myself, use that money to invest. And then once I start getting some money and some credibility, people want me to get into public speaking. Right. But along the way, I ended up starting a podcast. And so for me, I've really just been reaching out to very highly successful entrepreneurs and trying to just get the secret sauce, the carry patty formula from them pretty much essentially as to what it is that makes them so much different than the 99% of people who never experience success. And just from like I've been realizing, first of all, the first part is mindset, right? It's just as it's working on yourself. It sounds so cliche and sounds so like whoop de woo, whatever. Like, oh yeah, mindset, you fix your mind. But it's like it's really the origin of everything. But then from there, finding a way to take life into your own hands, whether that's entrepreneurship, whether that's starting a side hustle, whether that's getting into real estate, whether investing or as an agent, it's finding a way to really just get life back on your terms. It's you spend a lot of time working for your time so that you can make enough money to eventually buy your time back, essentially. And I'm still in that phase where I'm trying to work and get it off the ground so that I can get my time back. But for me, where it started off with my bank accounts, right? So what I suggest for anyone, and there's three different main types of institutions. It's regular institutionalized banks like Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, et cetera, et cetera. You got the big banks. Then you have your credit unions, which are essentially like banks, but they're usually a lot more local, hyper local. They usually really benefit the consumer, and you become kind of like an owner, I guess, once you become a member of the bank. And then you have online banks. So my setup right now is I have Chase just as a checking account, just because with Chase, they like for you to have pre-existing relationships when you apply for credit cards. So I opened up a Chase account just so I could have access to apply to more leverage, I guess, to apply to some of the higher tier credit cards in there. But that's another story. And then for my main checkings account, I use Charles Schwab. It's an online checkings account. And then for my savings account, I use Ally Bank. And I always recommend to people keep your checkings and your savings account in separate institutions and separate banks because it makes it harder to access. And when it's harder to access, you become more disciplined because you can't transfer money over as easily. So,
Gotcha.
having something like that in place where if I know I have to wait 3 to 5 business days for any money to get sent over, I'm not gonna buy that concert ticket. I'm not gonna buy the new Jordans that dropped. I'm not gonna buy that new car, right? Because I have to wait now 3 to 5 business days. And if something else were to pop up within that time, and then the car, the transaction doesn't get to go through, now I gotta incur a late penalty or some type of overdraft fee. And so I always say, no matter where you end up banking, make sure your checkings and your savings account are separate. That's a first start that definitely helps a lot of people save money.
Right out of high school, I'd gotten a bunch of money for graduating and just blew it all on junk.
Yeah.
A
It's
lot of A lot of teenagers do that.
It's one of those things where it's like we're not taught what else to do it with, and it's like when you see all that money. For me, that I had a similar situation where that first summer of the pandemic, I had worked at a restaurant, and we were one of the only restaurants open in town because we had a rooftop, and so we were technically considered outdoor dining still. So we were one of the only restaurants in town. It was booming. We were busy. No one in the restaurant wanted to come back and work. My best friend, who is now my girlfriend that works there, that introduced me to the job, she was like, "Hey, John, we're hiring. Why don't you just come over here? Like, you could easily get a job." And so I was like, "Oh, sure, why not?" And I started working, and I was doing maybe close to 40 hours, so nothing too major. But by the end of that summer, I had nothing to show for any of the hours that I worked because I bought a little chain and then I went to the outlets and I got some clothes.
Mhm.
And I've never been a materialistic person, but that was the first time I actually had a real job. In high school, I always played football and basketball. I was playing multiple sports. It was hard to find work when you're a multi-sport athlete in high
Of
school.
course.
So, and then in college, I had a work study, but that's not a real job. So that was the first time I actually had a job where I was working full adult hours and I had a little bit more money than I knew what to do with. And by the end of the summer, I didn't know where any of that money had gone. So I vowed from then on to make sure that I would treat my money properly so that it could work for me. And then that following summer, leading up to me getting my real estate license, I was taking my real estate class and I was doing close to 70 hours between the restaurant job and then K Jewelers, which was my first sales job. And by then, by that summer, I had saved up more money than I ever had in my life. And so it was a very, very, night and day kind of summer difference between the first summer where I got a job and actually finally started, touching some money, I guess you could say. And
Hmm.
then the second summer that came around. And that cushion has literally saved my butt so many times. Just having that cushion and building up that because entrepreneurship and real estate in general is such a when you're starting off, especially if you're someone like me who has shiny object syndrome, it can be so hard to get off the ground. It's insane. So if you don't have that buffer, especially if you have a family, especially if you have other responsibilities, if you don't have that buffer, it is a very, very stressful game to play. And had I not had that money saved, I would have definitely would have been forced to take a more traditional route just to make ends meet.
With the economy like it is now, and I hear a lot of people that are trying to buy homes says it's basically a nightmare. What do you do in this kind of climate?
Yeah, it really all depends on your market. And it's something where real estate isn't my primary focus anymore, but I still keep up with it and I'm still in the masterminds just because I genuinely love the people I've been able to come across in real estate. I've met a lot of amazing people. But
Yeah.
real estate is one of those things where it's so hyper local. And a lot of times people try to come up and give national advice and general advice, but trying to apply, it's one of those things where it's one of those like it sucks to say, but there's no one cookie cutter answer for any particular market. Because, for example, like right now in my area, pardon me, right now in my area, there's about 2 months supply of inventory. So for anyone that doesn't know what that means, is if no new houses were to come on the market in 2 months, we'll be completely out of houses to buy. And
Wow.
but then there's other parts in the country that have already gotten to like close to 7 months supply of inventory. So it's like night and day, right? And at least from my area also has a relatively high price point. The average home price here is close to 750, 800,000. So it's like that would be it would be hard to give advice for coming from a place like this, and then you live in like Louisiana and you got it home for like 50,000. And so it's like it's hard to give national advice, but one piece of advice that no matter where you're at always is valid is just start thinking of this as like an investor. This is your largest investment probably ever, your largest transaction you'll ever make. We're dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars most cases. So treat it as an investment. Oh, the roof is not fixed, or oh, the siding is a little off, or oh, the it has a blue bedroom and I like Fred. Like little things like that that could easily just be fixed. Things like that should not matter in the grand scheme of things. If more people thought like an investor, especially if you don't have like FU money, like where you just put a million down cash and buy a house. It's like if you don't have that type of money, treat it like an investor because in 20 years from now, everything will be a discount, right? The prices from today, 20 years from now, will look like you got a house on sale. So treat the property like an investment. Talk to a lender, talk to a trusted real estate advisor, and run the numbers. Hey, if you I can only afford a $3,500 a month payment. Well, do some shopping, look around, go to some open houses, check out what houses can you afford at that price range. If you like what you see, okay, kind of move forward. If you don't like what you see, ask yourself, why are you moving? What's causing the moves? Whether it's for you to buy or for you to sell, what's prompting the decision? Is it because, you know, I just want a better spot for myself? Or maybe it's better off to hold out, right? You might be better off holding out. But there's something in real estate. It's like the 12 Ds, and I forget all 12, but it's like death, divorce, displacement, disease. Um, there's a bunch more. I forget. I'm blanking right now, but there's going to be reasons why people move no matter what the market is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you had a death in a family, you have to sell in the state. The house is going to sell. You're not going to hold off and wait to the market. This house is going to sell, right? If you have a new person that's being brought into the family, let's say you're having a baby, now you have four people in a two-bedroom. Well, that's not going to work for too long, right? Especially once the baby starts growing. Let's say you want to plan for another one, right? That's not going to work out too well. So you're going to have to move unless you want to cram up your family in a two-bedroom. And so things like that, there's always going to be movers in the market, no matter what the market is. So ask yourself, are you moving because of you're scared? Are you moving because you just kind of want to, or are you moving because there's a solid reason to move? Whether it's to buy or sell and invest, and then run the numbers. Just go by the numbers. Too many people treat it as an emotional transaction, and we have to think of it more as a business transaction and as a numbers game versus do I like the backyard or do I like the pool, right? It's numbers that we have to spend more time focusing on.
Well, I believe here in Texas that the houses are selling pretty well.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of people coming from like California, New York, and other states like that. They're trying to get away from whatever's going on in their state. So they come here and the rent is going up. You know, I leased this home and it's constantly going up each new renewal. What used to be $1,500 is now like $2,500 to $3,000.
Mm.
But I have a friend of mine who he builds these homes out of those big containers, shipping containers. He's selling his homes like crazy. You know, people are buying them up like crazy. I think that they're cheaper. I'm not sure. I don't, like I say, I don't know real estate that well,
Yeah.
but you know, the house here that might go for $250,000, then California's probably would go for $2 million. So yeah,
Yeah.
I know it depends on where you're at. I get that part, but I don't know all those ins and outs, and quite honestly, I don't have the desire to go find out.
Yeah, and that's a good distinction though, because a lot of times, like for example, I could have very much well said, yeah, of course I know what to do in real estate, but it's like no, a lot of realtors will sell you a dream, right? A lot of realtors will sell you the dream that they're the agent. And it's like for me, I'm not the agent that's gonna know everything. Real estate isn't my main focus. My main focus really is getting into public speaking and growing my podcast. It's like having someone that will look you in your eyes and say like, hey, you're better off with this person. That's a very commendable trait that you should be looking, and very honorable trait, and just anything when it comes to life. And for a lot of realtors, will come up on a stage and get a platform to speak, and it's like, oh, it's the best time to sell right now. It's the best time to buy. Or interest rates just dropped a little bit. It's still a good time to buy, but it's like, does that actually meet your long-term plan? Does that meet your needs currently in the short term? And does that align with your long-term plans? Right? Because in 5 years, let's say you want to have five houses, well, you're gonna have to start kind of now. So buy the first house now, house hack it. Right. For anyone that doesn't know what that means, it's pretty much you live in one side of the house and you rent out either the other rooms or the other units. Right. And that way you could save on the mortgage. and start doing that, and then start, every year adding one more, and that starts building up pretty quickly. So it's like, make sure you can have someone that can sit down and assess what your current needs are in the present time and help you match that up with your long-term vision and plan for yourself. And if it now is the best time to transact, they help you move forward. And if now is not the best time to transact, they could do so without not making you feel guilty for not transacting.
Mhm. I'm a big believer in if there is a will, there is a way. I, for one, I don't really have much capital. I'm on limited budget, the disability and retirement. And I want to grow my business. And what little bit of money that I save here and there goes into my podcasting, because you know as well as I do, it takes money to do what we do.
Mm.
Doesn't take a whole lot of money, but it still takes some money.
It's a labor of love.
Exactly. So I don't get a lot back from what I'm doing. I'm spending more than what I'm making, and I'm hoping that'll change soon. But I want to branch out, and I want to get into uh, like different merchandise, like T-shirts and cell phone cases, sweaters, whatever, hats, the whole 9 yards. What do you think of businesses like Teespring?
Like Teespring, what's Teespring, if you don't mind me asking?
Okay, so Teespring, you go and you put your logo on their website.
Like a custom
Uh,
ink kind of web, like
yeah,
a
yeah, they have all the the t-shirts and hats and all that stuff. So
okay.
you just pick out what you would like to sell. You design everything. They make it. They they might make it say it costs them $10 to make, so you charge $20 for that product. So they'll probably end up getting 15 out of it. You get $5 out of it. It's a start, you know. I don't remember exactly what the percentages are on that, but I know they take a pretty good chunk. Of course, they're the ones really with the capital, you know.
Yeah.
So I start out with something like that, and hopefully later on I can maybe find a business that can start printing all this stuff out for me, and then I can sell it and ship it. But Teespring does all that for me. Should I
Yeah.
stick with Teespring or should I go into making it myself?
Yeah. So I guess one of the big distinguishing factors from people that find success of any level and people that tend to struggle and find themselves stuck is resourcefulness. And you are limited by your own capital because your means of thinking only expand to using your own capital. And so for like in real estate, there's so many different ways that you could get money. There's private money, there's hard money, there's creative financing strategies like subject to, and there's so many, you can assume the mortgage. There's so many different ways to find money. And in terms of the business ownership space, I'm not as familiar with all the different terminologies and ways to find money, but I'm sure there are other ways you can joint venture on a deal. The same way in people joint venture in real estate, you can joint venture on your business. And if you have someone that you trust and have similar missions and similar core values, partner up with someone that lacks what you have and is strong where you lack could probably be the best thing, because if it's on solely just on you, you're going to be very limited in your time and your, how much you could stretch yourself mentally, because
Mhm.
starting something is extremely hard. And so I would recommend really spending some time to think. It's like, hey, should I outsource this to a company and eat away all at my, majority of my profits, or should I find someone and offer them equity in the company and with the option to buy them out in the future once it gets up and running, and if you wanted to decide to go on your own, right? So that's how I kind of would think about it, because when it comes to the clothing industry, fulfillment is a big thing, because now you have to mail it out, you have to make sure the sizing fits and all that jazz. It's a lot. And I can't sit up here and say that I have experience in the clothing space, but I do have friends who have experience in the clothing space, and they've been doing it for quite some time now. So It's definitely one of those things where it's like, do you want to be the person that is responsible for everything? But then, as I said, either way, at your profits from using something like custom ink or Teesprings, or do you want to work with somebody, joint venture, fast track, because then they'll have the capital. And if you come up with the business plan, there's tons of other people out there that have a lot of time and not a lot of money. Well, well, that would be like people like us. Then there's other people who have a lot of time, a lot of money, and not a lot of time, right? So finding those people with a lot of money that are looking for things to venture into, that are looking for new businesses to potentially seed fund, right? And so if you come prepared with a vision, with a business plan, with some numbers and some metrics, and it's like, okay, you have a minimum viable product. It's like, well, someone who is in alignment with what you want going on may be able to help you fast track to that next level.
I don't have time or money, to be honest with you. All my time goes into this. I do everything,
Yeah.
but I want to get to that level where I can start hiring people to help me with editing and, booking and all that. It's hard to keep up with all that when you're one person,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
yeah.
It's one of those things where the fish is always the last one to realize it's in the water.
Hmm.
And I say that because some of the things that you're good at already right now, other people are probably struggling to learn. So you already know how to work a mic and work some headphones and some gear, and you say you do everything on your own. So I'm assuming you do the editing and stuff like that. It's
Yes, I
like, who
do.
else do you know that may be struggling with that and wants to outsource it? And for the short term, just kind of put a little bit of extra stress on yourself and then pick up some clients, maybe do some podcast editing. You look at all the skills, do a self audit, look at all the skills you already have that someone else may find valuable, then go find those people that are looking for that skill. And let's say I'm gonna just stick with the podcast editing because it's an easy example. We're both podcasters, right? You find a couple people that need help with podcasting, don't know how to edit, they're looking to start a show, right? You connect with them. Hey, I'll edit your first podcast episode. I'll charge you $50. And right now you're making about $50 per episode that you edit. Now at first, the economies of scales kind of suck because you're trading up a lot of your time now and you already got to do all your own stuff.
Hmm.
But then you kind of just deal with it for a little bit. You get a couple more clients, you put an extra, load or two on your back until you get enough money to break even by hiring a VA. And then from there, you literally spend all your profits to hire that VA. Now you're just breaking even, but now you don't have to do any of that work. Now your VA handles it. Now you have a little bit of an extra load. Now you pick up a couple more clients, right? You can get that money going up a little bit. And then as your VA starts getting better, they're going to be able to do a lot more because that's going to be their sole focus. And then from there, now you got a little mini podcast editing agency and kind of get that going off the ground. And now you have something where at the very least, it could help keep you afloat and then maybe get you a little bit of extra money to help pay for your Zoom or for your, I don't know if you host with Buzzsprout or your, hosting website and
Yes.
some of your other things that you may be paying for. And like, there's a lot of little services and like websites that kind of add up when in the podcasting space really quickly. So
Yeah.
it's like, now you got your little podcast editing agency going. Your VA is handling everything. You might not be making crazy returns, but it's enough to at least pay off for all your little subscriptions with in the podcasting space and start from there.
Yeah. What I like about Podmatch, which we both use, that helps to get my guests. But after so many, I get paid for doing those interviews. Podmatch is a great way to get into doing podcasting. Uh, of course, they have to be a paying member to get paid. You getting paid, but it adds up quick. I mean,
Yeah,
what the first 2 months I did it, I made 100 and what was it, 130, $140.
really, wow.
And then another month went by and I made another $130.
Jeez,
So
that's really good. That's
yeah,
enough to pay for like a year membership of Calendly almost. So
right.
that could help you book with all your bookings. Now you got off 1 month of podcast interviews. Now you got your whole years of Calendly book, and then slowly that adds up. And then you got everything slowly but surely, getting paid off. And now you don't have to pay for any subscription services. Now you're breaking free, Right now you have what? Let's do the numbers, right? Calendly, it's about $10 a month, right? Podmatch, if you're paying for a host account, is that $6 a month.
Right.
Then let's see, Buzzsprout, that could be easily $15 a month, depending on which plan you have,
I think it's
right?
$24 a month.
24. Okay, so now we're at $40 a month, right? Now, let's say, are you using Descript at all? Like, what are you using for editing?
I use VSDC.
How much is
That
that?
it's $100 a year.
$100 a year. So that's like $8 a month,
Yeah,
essentially.
something like that. Yeah.
All right. So now let's say all in, right? You're probably spending close to like 50 to 60, maybe more bucks per month, assuming you're not buying anything like super fancy schmancy. Now,
Yeah.
50, 60, $70 a month, well, that doesn't really add up in the short term. But let's say you do that 4 months, right? Now you have $200. That's a part-time VA. So as I said, you pick up the load on yourself for a little bit longer, and then sooner or later, now you have a part-time VA working 20 hours per month or 20, 30, 20 hours per week for you. And now they're in 20 hours, they take care of all your editing, your scheduling, and your social media posting. Now you just got all this free time. Now you could put that towards other activities so that you can start growing and start, getting more stuff off of your plate so that you
Hmm.
can focus on the things that bring in the income.
It's it's not easy, I can tell you that, because I'll do sometimes two or three interviews a day. So I put out an episode every day. So you're looking at, I do that for an hour. Takes me a couple hours to do the editing, and then you got the uploading and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I really need the help. But if I can pick up some editing and I can fit it in, I wouldn't mind doing that. It's just finding the time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's the same, man. We all make time for the things we want to make time for. And
Yeah.
the people who are the most successful don't have the most time. They just use the time the most efficiently. And so it's like, how can you become more efficient? What can you do to, like, for example, like for your show notes, you could easily learn how to use Chat GPT, which is like AI, to help create your show notes. Now, instantly, boom. Now your podcast show notes is like that's being taken care of you. You might save an extra 5 minutes per episode, right? You said you drop an episode a day, 7 days a week, 5 times 7. That's an extra half hour that you got to pretty much do whatever it is that you could use, right? And let's say 7 episodes a week, 4 weeks in a month. Now that's 30 minutes. That's what 36, 120. That's 2 extra hours that you could use for wherever. And that compounds in the long run. But in the short term, it doesn't seem like much. Like, what am I gonna do with an extra 2 hours? Well, tell that to a millionaire and they'll make you an extra $100,000 in 2 hours or something, right? And so it's all about how you use the time, not about how much time you have.
Well, what I've been doing is helping to book other people on the shows and
Yeah.
actually make pretty good money doing that. So that's a good, that's something else people could do.
Yeah, and then you said you get pretty good at that. Tell everyone that you help book to give you a testimonial. Hire a guy on Fiverr for like $30, put together a testimonial quick video, like, and then from there, now up your prices like 20, $30 per person. And now it's like, hey, yeah, in order to help fulfill you guys, further, I need to up the prices so I can continue delivering this high level of service. Look at all the track history. Look at all the people I've been able to help. Now there's social proof that you have a proven concept, a proven model. And now the perceived value that you have is now going to raise. So when you up your prices, people they're going to be less willing to question your increase in prices and what you charge because now you have a proven track record. And now with the extra money that you're getting, well, then you could find ways to easily leverage that out and use that to help leverage more your time out.
What exactly are you wanting to be an entrepreneur of? Did you say you're kind of getting away from the real estate?
Yeah. So for me right now, my main focus for this year is growing a podcast. That is my main focus.
That's just the
Yeah.
podcast.
But like right now, I'm doing several things. Like I'm creating a social media course right now. I am doing a virtual summit next month. That's gonna get me some money. And then, but really, I'm trying to get into, well, not even trying. I'm going to get into paid public speaking.
Okay.
Right now, I just paid for an accelerator program. My goal is to land my first TED Talk within the next 90 days and then leverage that to get into getting paid to speak. And once my show starts to grow, that's going to open opportunities and doors that I can't see right now in the present time. But eventually I want to also write a book, things like that. And where I end up really seeing it going is really some form of like coaching, either like some form of like, personal finance coach or entrepreneurship coach. And in the short term, I may actually do create. So I started my own social media marketing agency, but I wanted to do content creation services. And after realizing that's not really what I wanted to do, because I already created my own content, so doing for other people, it's kind of a drag, honestly. But
Yeah.
I genuinely enjoy the teaching side of things. So that's why I'm creating a course now on social media to help teach these realtors how to leverage social media, how to use marketing. Because it baffles me how many realtors don't know a thing about marketing, and yet the main reason why people hire them is to market their home. So it's like, they don't know how to make a video on Instagram. They don't know about color theory. They don't know about copywriting. They don't know about any of this stuff in the marketing world. And it's like you're literally being hired to market. That's your almost your primary role when people are looking to hire you. And so as now it's like, how can I help teach them? Because I'm no longer doing that stuff in the real estate space, but all that same principles I'm doing now for my podcast so I can grow my show. And so for me, it's once you have the audience will tell you what they want. And then you don't have to play the guessing game because you could try to create that one product or service that lands. But for now, I'm really just focused on growing the show, building a community. Because then let's say the audience say, "Hey, John, we really want to learn how to build credit." Well, I'm gonna create a course on how to build credit. That's my offer. And then I'm gonna sell courses on how to build credit, and it's gonna hit every single time because I'm making exactly what the audience asks me, and I'm not guessing as to is this gonna land or not.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of folks that do the same thing that you're doing, and they've kind of branched out that they're authors, they get paid to go out and speak and making money doing their shows. Uh, is that I mean that's all you want to do for the rest of your life, or are you looking to maybe branch out and maybe I don't know, maybe start your own company?
And I mean, I may turn the marketing agency into its own thing, but for the most part, what's really fulfills me the most is helping other young people learn about money and become financially literate because those things that I lacked. So like that the podcast, that's really like it's a long-term play. And I'm very fortunate that I'm able to play this long term, but I'm playing chess right now. I'm
Yeah.
not stressing in the short term on money or how am I gonna, make this money and get paid right this second. I'm more so focused on how can I impact these people. There's a saying, don't focus on passive income, focus on passive impact. Because if you can impact people's lives when you sleep, you'll be able to make so much more money than you'll ever know what to do with. And so right now, I'm just focusing on how can I bring more value? How can I impact more people? How can I help people transform more and more? Because if you keep on giving value, sooner or later, it's a law of reciprocity. People are going to want to find a way to give back, right? And so the longer the runway, the bigger the plane that could take off. I got that quote from Alex Hormozy. So if you keep on providing value, you keep on providing value, sooner or later, people are gonna ask like, "Hey, how can I work with you? Hey, how can I support you? Hey, how can I help what you got going on?" Because you then given them so much value, they feel almost guilty because they haven't given you anything in return. And so I'm just gonna keep on giving, keep on pouring into my keep on pouring into my audience, and then as that develops, as that grows, once you have a top platform, whether it's podcasting or a social media channel or a YouTube channel, whatever it may be, that'll open doors. If you want to do advertisements, you'll be able to do so because you have the listeners, you have the audience. If you want to do sponsorships, you'll be able to do so. If you want to do subscriptions, you'll be able to do so. Right? If you want to do brand collaborations, you'll be able to do so. So it's like once you have the audience, you will have a lot more opportunities. And so for me, just right now, just growing my audience and cultivating that audience. It's a long-term play.
Do you feel like you are set apart from these other folks, and what makes you different from them?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that make me different than most people is I'm still on the journey in real time. When it comes to young people, most people are targeting millennials. Most people are targeting the older folks that are have already kind of walked their journeys. But for me, I'm targeting the young folks because one, the people I'm targeting in the age group are the same age as the people I went to high school with, right? So I'm still only 21, and so I have leverage over a lot of people that are older than me because I know what it feels like to go to school during the pandemic. Most people can't relate to that. People can relate to me a lot more. I grew up in the project. I grew up going to inner city public schools. I'm a lot more relatable to the target audience that I want to reach. So that's the first differentiating factor. The second differentiating factor is that I didn't wait for me to become successful before I started giving back. I'm giving back along the way. A lot of people, they kind of go ghost, they work hard, they are very under the radar, and then they pop out, boom, they're successful. But it's like, oh, buy my course, buy my this, buy my XYZ. Right. And so it's like for me, it's like, now I'm still in the gutter. I'm still trying to, get my way out, and I'm connecting with a lot of amazing people and sharing that and just being transparent. Like there's a oversaturation of information, but people are starving for connection. There's
Mhm.
no connection. People are feel more depressed coming out of this pandemic than ever. People feel lonelier coming
Yeah.
out of this pandemic than ever, right? People, there's information everywhere. There's not connection everywhere. That's the main differentiating factor. And unlike most people at this current time, I have nothing, really to sell. There's no catch. There's no, hey, I want to get you in my funnel so that I can upsell you into my mastermind. Or it's like there's no catch to it, right? This is, as I said, it's a labor of love. The intentions are pure.
Yeah, I'm with you with that whole connection because it's like going to Walmart or most grocery stores now. There's two or three cashiers and everything is self-service.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I grew up in a different time. We stood in line and went up to the cashier. I'd actually rather spend a few more minutes in the line just so I can talk to the cashier. And, I'm trying to make them laugh. Some kind of interaction. Everything's so impersonal now.
Yeah.
I
For
think.
me, like, I apologize. I was gonna say for me, I'm the same way. I go self-service in the grocery store just because I gotta get up out of there. But like I always deposit my cash at the bank with the bank teller.
Mm-hmm.
Always. I
Yep.
always talk. I know at least like five bank tellers at when I go and deposit my money. I know five, and I tell them about the podcast. I tell them about what I got going on with the speaking and with the real estate stuff, and we just have a conversation. And it's and great because like these are people too, and they have lives too. A lot of these people, so it's like you're not the main character everywhere else. So it's like sometimes it's good to just reach out to other people and just that are around you, and get to hear their stories and talk to them and make their day.
Well, you never know. That kind word can make the difference in someone's life. They may have been ready to give up on life, and your act of kindness changed their mind and their way of thinking, just like that. You don't
Exactly.
know. Yeah, but you seem to have a good head on your shoulders, and I like your attitude. You're not letting anything hold you back. You're not using excuses, and you're moving forward. What advice would you give to the folks of your age group that I don't know, they do look for excuses of why they can't do this and why they can't do that.
We're not victims, right? When we're born, we look like our parents. When we die, we look like our choices, right? Know that we have the power to create everything we ever wanted, everything we ever dreamed of in this reality, and that until you start to take ultimate accountability and ownership of your life, you will be a slave to whoever chooses to do so over yours. So if you're not taking ownership over your life, you will be a slave to whoever decides to do so. And so take back the control, take back the power, and go out there and strive for more. There's more out there. There's people out there that, have walked the journey already. And if you think that you're strapped on resources, maybe you're strapped on time, there's people who have the blueprint. You have to get yourself out there. So always remember, when you die, you look like your choices. So go out there and make the choices that'll end up leading you to a path where you'll be proud and regret free.
You give me hope for the future, man.
Thank you, Kyle.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, so if you find any value in this episode, make sure to go check out www.walk2wealth.com. That's www.walk2wealth.com. There you could check out the podcast. You could find all the social medias attached to that website as well. That's where the best way and the easiest way to get in contact with me.
All right. And what all social media are you on?
I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube, I'm on everywhere you can think of. Only thing I'm not on is Twitter. I created an account, but I can't use it. But if you want to really get in touch with me, you contact me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active.
Well, I'll put all the links in the description, so it'll make it easy for folks to find you. Man, I really appreciate you coming on, and like I said, you give me hope that that there's got to be more like-minded young folks like you that are, gonna go out there and make something of themselves. And y'all got to take care of us old farts.
We're doing my best, man. We're doing my best.
Man, really, I really appreciate you. And when you got something new going on, I'd like for you to come back and talk about it.
Sounds good, man. I'll definitely keep you in the loop.
And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the show, please hit that subscribe button, and I hope you'll come back. For my regulars, it's because of y'all that I get to do this. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network